Welcome back, everyone. It is I, the Oscar-nominated a-hole, the a-hole who is sometimes sort of a troll, and today we're going to be talking about some interesting news that has come out thanks to the courtesy of Kevin Feige himself, the president of the MCU and the Marvel, aka the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He has stated that there is actually a 5-year plan after Endgame, but do not expect the Fantastic Four and X-Men. Now, this is a very important thing to piece of news to wrap our brains around. Why is that exactly? Well, the 20th Century Fox merger deal was kind of a big deal, and really the only thing that a lot of people were going for with it, the only reason why people wanted it was, of course, because of the possibility of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four coming into the franchise. And if they're not going to be in it in the next 5 years, well, what the heck was the point of buying Fox? Because otherwise, I'm pretty sure a large majority of us would be like, actually, we kind of like Fox being independent because then it gives a little bit more competition in the media and the cinematic Hollywood landscape. Nonetheless, let's dive into this article and see exactly what Kevin Feige says. We're going to actually look at a quote of his in regards to this whole situation. Starting here, it says that in a new interview with IGN, the Marvel president Kevin Feige confirmed that there is a plan, a flesh-out 5-year plan, actually, but don't expect any announcements until Far From Home after it hits theaters. Interesting. So it seems as though Kevin Feige in the MCU, as we know, has been hiding the next phase of the MCU. Personally, I am not interested in the next phase of the MCU at all, except for the fact of seeing if it will become the giant train wreck that I expect it will inevitably become. And I noticed one of my fellow subscribers mentioned that the MCU died when Stan Lee passed, and I would totally agree with that, and more so, actually, that I would actually be very thankful that Stan Lee was able to at least see it in the grandiose state that it is before it inevitably falls. I would hate to see Stan Lee have to go through that. I'm glad he was able he was able to be there at the highest point before it fell. Whenever it does decide to actually fall and crumble. And so I'm glad that Stan Lee was able to go out on a high. Of course, not saying that I'm glad he's passed. Obviously not. But I think that his passing did affect the MCU, possibly in a sense. Don't know. Just a thought. Anyways, let's continue on in the article. The article goes on to state that Feige did eventually concede that the studio is going to keep making movies, which, duh. But you shouldn't count on anything involving the recently acquired X-Men or Fantastic Four quite yet. Disney basically had to start from scratch with those franchises after the merger with 20th Century Fox, Feige said, and any hypothetical reboots are probably a few years away. And this, of course, is kind of disconcerting. This is kind of what we thought, at least for the fans of those, I'm sure, out there who are just desiring the X-Men and the Fantastic Four more than anything to come into the MCU. Personally, to myself, I am not. But if they did a really good job of it, I would not be averse to it. I actually would be like, oh, wow, I wouldn't mind watching it if they actually did a pretty good job on it. But I think that this is very depressing for a lot of the fans who wanted this to be like the next thing. And I wasn't expecting it to come out, next year. But I would expect like in the next 3 years, like in the next phase, right? They'd at least introduce an X-Men or an X-Men film or the trailer or the idea or the concept. But now they're just like, nah, probably not. Maybe next phase after the next 5 years. Like, seriously? Seriously, Kevin Feige? Really? You're going to introduce them into the second half of the next 10 years? Really? That would seem very, very unwise. Especially since after you have the loss of Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, and Chris Hemsworth as Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, you would probably want to introduce some new characters that people actually care about. Not Captain Marvel. People like the X-Men. People like the Fantastic Four. Nonetheless, let's look exactly at the quote that Kevin Feige gave. Kevin Feige said, quote, Probably, only because, as you've heard me say before, until it was all done, we literally couldn't do anything, Feige said. So essentially, it's sort of day one. But during that time, we have built and fleshed out our 5-year plan of where we're heading, the first few years of which we'll be announcing, as I said, relatively soon after these next two movies. That, of course, being Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home. So, we all know that there's probably going to be a Doctor Strange sequel. There's going to be obvious Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And, of course, an inevitable, horrible, awful, bland, boring, meh Captain Marvel 2, which will not have the box office support of Avengers Endgame. So that will be quite an interesting box office indeed to behold. Nonetheless, we'll see. We will inevitably see. We will see if, of course, the MCU will be able to uphold its virtuoso standing in regards to the fans, and if they were going to support it with their monetary devices after, of course, the fall of Endgame and the losing of our three main characters. The three leads leaving the stage as our main heroes. And when that happens, we shall see if the general populace will say, you know what, 10 years, it was a good run, I'm good, I'm done. I'm ready to go on to bigger and better things. Or better yet, let me see a brand new wave of heroes, possibly the DC. From what I'm seeing, the DC is actually going into a totally different route than the MCU. Actually, there is the highly probable way that DC is actually going into more of a solo, not always filled with continuity, like the MCU, kind of more of like a back to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man days, back to the Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, their separate stories, their own separate universe, and then maybe every now and then crossover. And personally, as an old school cinema fan of old school superhero films, I kind of like that, and I'm actually really digging it. And there's something totally different from what Marvel's doing, and I think if DC does do that, and if they execute it well, they got 10 years for the future for them, where the MCU will be slowly crumbling away, because the fan base is like, well, I got to the end. I got to the end of the tale. I've invested 10 years of my life into this, and I really don't feel like investing another 10 into characters that I really don't care about. But Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, I'm more than happy to invest some of my time in them. The new Joker, I would definitely love to invest some years into that character. That thing looks really good. So anyways, let me know what you guys and gals think about this piece of news about the next future 5 years of the MCU. Do you care? You probably don't, just like myself. And if you don't care, please let me know how much you do not care. And if you do care, tell me how much you do care. And if you like the video, please do like it. And if you don't, dislike it. And if you want to subscribe to my channel, if you have not done so already, please make sure to subscribe. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day.